from the KWQC studio, this is TV6 News at Noon.
We begin with breaking news out of Kwqc, Iowa, where authorities have been investigating a shooting at Kwqc Cave State Park. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marcia Lenz. The Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation tells TV6 that a shooting happened at a campground at the park early this morning. The park was evacuated as they searched for a suspect. Now, we have several crews in the Kwqc area covering this story and its impacts, and TV6's Evan Denton joins us live from the park with what we've learned so far. Evan?
Hey, Marcia. At 6:23 a.m., the Jackson County Sheriff's Office and the Department of Criminal Investigation got a call of a shooting at the Kwqc Caves campground here. The officers located 3 deceased bodies on the scene. Identities have not yet been confirmed. Officers then searched for an unaccounted camper. That camper has been identified as Anthony Sherwin, 23, from Nebraska, the suspected shooter. Sherwin appears to have suffered from a self-inflicted gun wound. Now, as you can see, a perimeter is set up around the campground. The park is remaining closed and will remain closed until further notice. The Department of Public Safety says there's no danger to the public. In Kwqc, Evan Denton, TV6 News.
All right, thank you, Evan, for bringing us the latest. We have also learned that Camp Shalom, also in Kwqc, has been evacuated as a precaution. Parents were notified and all campers and staff are accounted for and safe. They were taken to another location to be picked up. Stay with TV6 for updates on this developing situation.
Police department said his parents were shot in the camper. Caller said she did believe she heard a gunshot. Don't really have much other information at this time.
An Iowa campground becomes the site of a tragedy. We have the latest details on a triple homicide at Kwqc Cave State Park.
We didn't tell the kids anything. We just told them they got to get in the vans, we got to go. And our focus was to get them out of here as fast as possible.
A Christian youth camp near the crime scene site sprung into action to evacuate. How parents are reacting. Your news at 5 starts now.
Live from the KWQC studio, this is TV6 News at 5.
Good ambulance, respond out in the Kwqc Caves. The campground at the top of the hill. Reports of a possible shooting. We have no other information. We need to stage probably down at the bottom of the hill so we can get law enforcement out there.
What began as a usual summer morning at Kwqc Cave State Park has ended in fatal bloodshed. I'm Paula Sands in for Sharon tonight. 3 people plus a suspect are dead after what investigators believe was a horrifying shooting at the campground at the park this morning. Our team is on the ground right now in Kwqc with full coverage of what happened and response from a youth camp that is near that park. So this happened at a campground at the Kwqc Cave State Park that is just off Caves Road in Kwqc, Iowa. The chaotic scene playing out over a series of hours of investigation and search by law enforcement. TV6's Evan Denton joins us now at Kwqc Cave State Park with how all of this unfolded through the day. Evan?
Hey, Paul, I'm here at the Kwqc Cave State Park entrance where earlier today there were several law enforcement agencies on the scene. A handful are still here, and the campground remains closed. Now, at 6:23 this morning, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office and Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation received a call about an active shooting at the Kwqc Cave State Park. We have since learned that officers have located 3 deceased bodies, and the suspected shooter, Anthony Sherwin, a 23-year-old from Nebraska, appeared to suffer a self-inflicted gun wound.
Just shortly, we believe we have located Anthony Sherwin west of the park, and he is deceased of what appears to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. There's quite a few campers out there. The campground was relatively full. Officers made contact with all the campers, tried to get as many out as they could.
And they're still trying to figure out if Anthony Sherwin had a relationship with the deceased individuals. It is still an active investigation. In Kwqc, Evan Denton, TV6 News.
Thank you, Evan. Now, also about the victims, officers still working to identify them. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds released this statement saying today she's praying for the victims' families and, quote, I'm horrified by the shooting this morning at Kwqc Cave State Park and devastated by the loss of 3 innocent lives. Director of the Iowa DNR, who helps operate the park, also had a statement that they're devastated by the tragic events. Quote, "Our long-standing tradition of enjoying Iowa's natural wonders was shaken today, but the legacy for the millions of families that recreate at Iowa state parks will continue." About 2 miles from Kwqc Cave State Park is a camp, Camp Shalom, a Christian camp where kids were wrapping up their week there. Just after 9 this morning, they were evacuated and taken to a safe spot away from the campsite and away from the shooting scene. TV6's Kyle Keel joins us now live from Little Bear Park, where the campers and staff members were taken today. Kyle?
Yeah, Paula, the park here in downtown Kwqc is about 10 minutes away from Kwqc Caves and Camp Shalom. And it was just about 9:13 this morning when Camp Shalom staff members were notified of the shooting. And it was 2 minutes after that that they sprung into action to get all the staff and kids safely away from the situation at the Kwqc Caves. And it just took about 15 minutes when they were on the road with the 100 campers as well as the 35 staff members. They were all loaded into a bus and other various vehicles and transported here to Little Bear Park in downtown Kwqc. It's a place that campers are safe or are familiar with because they come here during the camp week, and it's also right down the street from the Kwqc Police Department, so the staff members felt that it was a safe place. Now, an email blast was sent to parents letting them know that the children were safe. They were at Little Bear Park and were able to be picked up at the end of camp right around 11 o'clock this morning.
That's too close to home for us, but Camp Shalom has been part of our lives for a long time, and we knew that the staff and everybody was going to take care of it quickly and swiftly and safely, and all the kids were going to be okay, and they got them out of there and brought them to a safe place and where they can still enjoy the rest of their trip and make sure that they still have a good time to finish out their week.
Now, camp counselors were told not to tell the kids about the shooting at Kwqc Cave State Park. In fact, they just treated it as if it was a field trip for the campers. And fortunately, everyone was safe, and the camp counselors were able to make this experience as normal as possible. And, of course, the safety of the kids was the top priority. Live in Kwqc, Kyle Keel, TV6 News.
Kyle, thank you. Now, to reiterate, they did not tell the kids what was happening when they evacuated them like that. Now, the Camp Shalom officials say now for the families and the campers looking to pick up their things, their belongings that were left behind at the camp, they're going to hold a pickup day for that. They're going to do that at St. Paul Lutheran Church on Brady Street in Davenport on Monday from 9 to 4. This is a developing story, of course. We'll continue to update you on any further developments on the air and on our news app.
Live from the KWQC studio, this is TV6 News at 6.
As officers searched the campground, they found one camper that was unaccounted for. His name, he was later identified as 23-year-old Anthony Sherwin, and we had information that he was armed at the time.
First at 6 tonight, the latest on a story we've been following all day, the investigation into a triple homicide at Kwqc Caves campground. I'm David Nelson.
I'm Paula Sands. We have had multiple crews on scene all day, and they join us again now for continued team coverage. First, some background on what unfolded. At 6:23 this morning, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office and Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation received a call about an active shooting at Kwqc Caves State Park. It happened at a campground right there at the park just off of Caves Road in Kwqc, Iowa. TV6's Evan Denton joins us live right now as he attended the news conference that was hosted by authorities. Evan?
That's right, Paula. Still looking for more information about a shooting that unfolded here at the Kwqc Cave State Park before 6:30 this morning. Now, we do know that officers have located 3 deceased bodies and the suspected shooter, Anthony Sherwin, a 23-year-old from Nebraska who appeared to suffer a self-inflicted gun wound. Now, one uncertainty is whether Sherwin had a previous relationship with the 3 victims.
We're still trying to figure that out. As you can imagine, the first concern was finding Mr. Sherwin, and so agents will be out there trying to figure that out. So we do not know of a relationship between the 2 groups. I believe he was in a separate campsite, but I do not know who he was with or what any relationship was between the 2 parties.
Now, the park will remain closed until further notice, and the officers are working to identify the victims. In Maquoketa, Evan Denton, TV6 News.
All right, thanks, Evan. Now, about 2 miles from the shooting site is the Christian summer camp, Camp Shalom. This morning, 100 campers were wrapping up the last few hours of their stay when they suddenly had to evacuate. TV6's Kyle Keel is live right now at Little Bear Park in Maquoketa, where the campers were taken this morning for safety. And Kyle, it looks like the staff jumped into action right away.
It was almost immediately, David. In fact, the camp counselors as well as the camp's program director were notified by one of Camp Shalom's maintenance workers at 9:13 about the shooting at Maquoketa Caves. And it was 2 minutes later that the counselors were already gathering the kids and the 35 staff members on buses and vans to transport them away from the situation at a safe distance. And it was about 10 minutes away at Little Bear Park here in downtown Maquoketa. That's where Camp Shalom staff treated it as if it was a field trip for the campers. The kids were not made aware of the shooting at Maquoketa Caves. It was the staff's top priority to keep the kids as safe and as comfortable as possible. As David mentioned, it was the last day of camp, so many parents were already on their way to Maquoketa to pick up their kids from camp. An email blast was sent out to those parents to let them know that their kids were safe and sound at the park and that the children could be picked up at 11. It was certainly a mix of emotions for both parents and the campers.
My heart dropped. It did, just to think how close this was, and then I became angry at the senseless gun crimes here.
Basically, we were just sitting outside, and we were going to do these things called War and Fuzzies, where we write on each other's papers, just nice things with our cabin. And then a staff member came out of the program center and told us to get in the program center immediately, and we didn't know what was going on at all, so we had to grab our stuff and go really fast. So basically, we got in there, and then they were getting all of our cabin groups lined up, and then they told us to run to the bus. So we were in the program center, and we had to run on the bus, and no one knew what was going on. We had to back in there really fast. So it was a little bit scary, but at the same time, the staff member are very good here, and I trust everyone. So I knew I was going to be safe and everything, even though we didn't know what was going on. So they handled it very well.
And luckily, all children, all staff members were safe and sound. In fact, at the end of camp director, the executive director of Camp Shalom, that's Tom Bly, he actually addressed the kids, thanking them for their cooperation when they had to evacuate early in the morning. And he also said that their parents would be explaining the situation that happened just down the road at Maquoketa Caves. Live in Maquoketa, Kyle Keel, TV6 News.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Now, Camp Shalom says families and campers who need to pick up belongings that were left behind today, they left that quickly. They can pick those things up on Monday. Belongings will be made available at St. Paul Lutheran Church at Brady and Lombard in Davenport this coming Monday from 9 to 4. Next at 10, new details tonight on the Maquoketa Caves triple homicide as investigators release the names of the victims and name a suspect in the case. Then, 6 people are arrested after a stabbing on a train in Chicago, sending multiple people to the hospital. And a major diplomatic breakthrough in the war between Russia and Ukraine as a grain exports deal is signed. Your news at 10 starts now.
Live from the KWQC studio, this is TV6 News at 10.
Developing tonight, we are learning new information on that triple homicide at Maquoketa Caves campground today. We've learned the victims, which include a small child, are family members from Cedar Falls. I'm David Nelson. We continue our team coverage tonight. TV6's Danny Whiskeyman has been following this case today and has new information, what we're learning now. Danny?
David, just within the last few hours, the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation named Tyler and Sarah Schmidt, both 42 and 6-year-old Lulu Schmidt, as the victims in the triple homicide at Maquoketa Caves campground earlier this morning. Now, investigators are trying to piece together their final moments and find a motive for this senseless tragedy. Here's what we know so far.
Police farmer, his parents were shot in the camper. Caller said she did believe she heard a gunshot. Don't really have much other information at this time.
That was from early this morning as police were initially called out to the Maquoketa Caves campground. The call came in at 6:23 a.m. as police and medics were dispatched. Upon arrival and after their initial investigation, 3 victims were found in a tent, all deceased with no suspect in sight. Police and numerous other law enforcement agencies, equipped with drones and airplanes, scoured the area for any sign of the suspect. Around 11 a.m., a body was spotted west of the campground. That is where police found 23-year-old Anthony Sherwin deceased from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Tonight, investigators have named him as the suspected shooter.
And we had information that he was armed at the time. Officers with the Iowa State Patrol, Jackson County Sheriff's Office, numerous law enforcement agencies have been out there, and just shortly we believe we have located Anthony Sherwin west of the park, and he is deceased of what appears to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Many Iowa politicians released statements sending thoughts and prayers to everyone impacted by the events. Governor Kim Reynolds saying she is, quote, horrified by the shooting. Law enforcement say there is no longer a threat to the public, but the Kwqc Caves campground will remain closed while they continue their investigation. And again, all within the last couple of hours, we've learned that the Iowa Office of the State Medical Examiner will conduct autopsies on the 3 victims, as well as conduct an autopsy on the suspect, Anthony Sherwin. David?
All right, thanks, Danny. We still have not yet learned if there was any relationship between the victims and suspected shooter or what his motive was. TV6 will continue to update this story as we learn more information, and we'll update you both on air and online.